Ruchem Aboim, M'Shem Irgin Shir Termos is Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. All the men who might share to come in person and everyone who's joining in through the phone or watching. Ruchem Aboim. I'd like to give a big ashikar to the supporters of tonight's shir, Dr. and Mrs. Aaron Mandel, Lili Nishmas Imo, Rishalea Basachova, Reb Chaim, Ola Sholem, Yotzad Yud Bais of Tenish Moshe Tuvia Lieff Chaim. Bais said to have the great schus and help Irgin Shir Torah organize the shiurim, sponsor share to donate. Call Irgin Shir Torah 718-851-8651 or 718-853-3950 or email to tapecenter@yeshivanet.com for this great schus. Tonight we have the covered have with us once again, Rabbi Moshe Tuvia Lieff, Shlita, Rabbi Agudas Bais Binyamin, on caring for every year. This is my covered corner of Lieff for tonight's drasha.
By Greenberg, before you leave, I need your phone number, okay? I got to read a shidduch. Oh, tonight's Tu B'Av. Shus, the Boston Rebbe, Shlita, the Chosheve Magonim von der Irgin Shir Torah, Rav Bald, Rav Deutsch, Achai V'Rei. The title of tonight's shir is Caring for Every Yid. There's a maxim we hear called unconditional love. Unconditional love means that regardless of what the person has done or has not done, how estranged they may be, you have to show them unconditional love. Tonight we're taking it to the next level. Unconditional caring. It's not enough to care for someone. It has to be unconditionally. Could you imagine if we had unconditional caring for shidduchim? There wouldn't be one girl or boy not married yet. Unconditional means you don't give up. Unconditional means you keep on trying again and again and again. Reb Shloimeh Mibavav Zatzal, the Heilige Bavav Rebbe, his Yortzeit was just recently. His Beis Medrash was originally, he had a yeshiva in the west side of Manhattan. And one day, he's walking to shul on Shabbos Kodesh, and he sees a bareheaded Jew. And he starts talking to him. And he tells the Yid, come, I'm coming to shul, to daven, it's Shabbos, come with me to the Beis Medrash. The Yid said, I haven't been in shul for over 40 years. He says, come, you'll sit next to me. I sing pretty nicely. You'll sing the davening with me. This triggered, elicited a response as singing the davening before the war was a chazan. And he says he was a chazan in a certain shtat. So the Rebbe says, you're going to daven for the Yomid. He brings him into the shul. And this formerly bareheaded Jew that hasn't davened to Rabbeinu Shalom in 40 years davens for the Yomid is the Shliach Tzibur in Bobov. And the next week, the Rebbe had told him, come again, daven again. He doesn't show up. He sends his son, Rabbi Naftali Zatzal, his successor as Rebbe, go look for him in Central Park. Mistama Dreiter in Central Park. The shul wasn't far from Central Park. He starts walking around the entrance to Central Park and he sees this bareheaded Yid, he's smoking. And he says, my father is looking for you. He wants you to come and daven with us. The Yid finishes a cigarette and he accompanies Reb Naftali to the shul. Reb Naftali whispers to his father that he found him in Central Park smoking. And the Rebbe says to him, daven for the Amid again. I want you to be a Shliach Tzibur. Noch in David, Rav Toy looks at his father after the fellow and said, Tate, that's a gerechet Shabbos. He was smoking on Shabbos. Said the Heilige Bove, hat gerechet, Hitler hat gerechet, hat nicht gerechet, Hitler, Yemach Shemai hat gerechet. Why do you think he was smoking? He went to the crematoriums, the gas chambers, he saw what happened to his family members. He's smoking. He's a Yid. He's not smoking. Hitler's smoking. That's what it means to care for every Yid. We've got everybody in a box. As long as they're part of our machaneh, we can relate to them. And sometimes we'll stretch even a little bit outside the machaneh. But to invite the Yid to come to daven for the Amid in Shul as Shliach Tzibur in Bobav, that's caring for every Yid. So what are the limitations of caring for every Yid? What are the limitations? In the Amidah and Shmei Nesrei, we say this 365 days a year. We say it every tefillah. We say it by Shachris, Mincha, Ma'ariv, Musaf, Nila. Maidim anachnu loch. And then we say, Hamerachim and Chasodech. It's out of joint. What do we say? Hamerachim Hatoiv ki lo ycholu rachamecha v'hamerachim ki lo yisamu chasodecha. Well, gedav zayin hatoiv ki lo ycholu chasodecha. We're talking about toiv, we're talking about chesed. So what's mishmanarein rachmanis? Hamerachim, who's merciful, ki lo yisamu chasodecha? Medreit di yitzres l'choyre di anshe knesset agdoilo. If we could say such things, be consistent. Hatoiv ki lo ycholu chasodecha. Hashem is good. He's the ultimate benefactor, and His goodness never ends. Hatoiv ki lo ycholu chasodecha. Amerachim, He's merciful because His mercy never ends. So what's the pshat? Hatoiv ki lo ycholu rachamecha v'amerachim ki lo yisamu chasodecha. I think the pshat is like this. I said over many years ago, I was at a chasana, Yishai Kutav's chasana, in Bnei Brak. The guy in the Rashiva Shlabot Gazal was Masada Kedushin. And I said over to him, he was Maskim. There's something called Se'i. When you get maxed out. The last nevuah that Moshe Rabbeinu told Klal Yisroel was V'ato al b'moseim sidroich. You will walk on their highest places. Says Agoin, the Rav of the Broyes Kehila, Rav Shimon Schwab Zatzal. The Se'i Enushi, the highest place that a human being can attain, that's the starting place for Achedi Yingel. On the highest level that a philosopher, a psychologist, a humanist could possibly attain, a human being, that's where you start. So there's a C for Bria. Well, one would suggest that there's just so much chesed you could do. I'll give him money. I'll do chesed. I'll find him a job again and again and again and again. 15th time, Shen Genug. When the chesed ends, that's when the Rachmanis kicks in. Kavyochel by the Rebbeinu Shalom, there's no Se'i. Hatoiv, the Rebbeinu Shalom is good. You know how good He is? Kilo chalu rachamecha. Because even when the chesed's over, the rachamim kicks in. V'amerachim kilo yisamu chasodecha. Mamash alum de shetifa the hair. But Rebbeinu Shalom, there's no end. It goes and it goes and it goes. There's no limitation to chesed. When the natural limitation of chesed is reached, Rachmanis comes in. When the natural limitation of Rachmanis comes in, that's when the chesed comes in. Unconditional love, unconditional caring. If you love another Yid and you care about another Yid, it's unconditional. I'm a chutzif. The Rebbe put him up to daven for the Yom the last Shabbos. And Vaitas Amachal Shabbos. And he's smoking on Shabbos. And the Rebbe tells him, daven for the Yom again. Because there's no enter a Rachmanis to a Chesed. But wissen was a Yid is. For every single Yid. You know, it doesn't just go for strangers. It goes for the ones you're closest to. It's a legendary Goyin, Reb Zev Hoberman, Zechat Tzaddik v'Kodesh L'Vrocha, the Mechaber of Zev Yitroif, Chavrusa of Mor, of Hutner Zatzal, in Machshava for years. He was the Miyaser of Philadelphia Yeshiva. He wrote gewaltige Sfarim. A big Bal Machshava. I was auch to know him a little bit. Almo gelikt in Leonin. His wife, Rebbetzin Esther Hoberman, was a mechaneches b'chesed elyon. Thousands of Talmidos. But you know, when Rav Hoberman would walk in the door, no matter who she would speak to, on the phone she would say, I apologize, I have to hang up. Rabbi Hoberman just walked in. Because chesed begins at home. And 7 o'clock, I'm sorry, Rabbi Hoberman has to eat dinner. She didn't call him Rabbi Hoberman to his face, but she had covered Malachim for her husband. She knew he was a venerable Talmud Chacham when he was younger, when he was older. Could you imagine that? If a wife, a Rebbetzin, says every time she's on the phone, I'm sorry, I have to hang up, my husband just walked in. And Lama Zogat, he's not a Rav and he's not a Rosh Hashiva, let's say he's a plumber, let's say he's a doctor, he's a dentist, a first grade Rebbe. I'm sorry, I would love to continue the conversation. My husband just walked in. When a husband, the minute he walks in the door, phone goes off. This is a connection. This is a transition. I got to connect with my wife. I've been gone the whole day. Ja, ich hab gelernt und ich hab gearbeitet. But now it's her time. When you pick up children in a carpool or they come home from the bus, there's nothing else in the world. That's caring for every Yid, including your children, and your Einiklach, and your grandparents, and your spouses, and your siblings, and your neighbors. Unconditional caring means always to care. Always to think about them. Always to think of things that you can do for them to enhance your relationship, to show that they're special. You know, the Kohen HaGodol Me'achad, Rav Victor Miller Zatzal, gave incredible shiurim, and was a fellow who used to come in, rushing in, taking a seat right in front of the Rav, and promptly fall asleep. But he didn't just fall asleep. We're talking about snoring, and not stam snoring, barn rattling snoring that could wake up the dead. It happened every single time he came in for Rav Miller's shir. I have an August group from Agudas Yisroel, Bais, Binyamin. They don't go to sleep on me. That I can tell you. They certainly don't snore. But this fella, he'd snore, mamish. Rabbi Miller never said a word. He came to Rabbi Miller and he apologized. I shouldn't come to the shir. I'm so beat up. I'm so exhausted. I take a train home. I rush to the shir. Rabbi Miller says, you come to the shir, you come to the shir, you come to the shir. It's a schus for you, it's a schus for me. You come to the shir. You know what happened to himself? This man retired from work, moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he joined his son in the koil, and he learned 3 starim in koil. That same fellow who fell asleep by the shir, all the encouragement of Rav Miller. Rav Miller today, unfortunately, everybody's worried about Vasiana Hut. You know, people go to a restaurant, and they have what's called restaurant envy. They ordered the wrong thing. They see the other fella's plate. I should have gotten that. And the papish eating themselves up alive. It tastes like ashes. Why didn't they get that? Or they go to Ateres Avram in the good old days. Und man hat ein Stückel Fleisch dort, steht at the corners, 250 people, and they're eating the steak, and they're saying, what am I doing? I should have sat on the other side. His steak is bigger, and it's rarer, and it's juicier. It's twice the size. Why didn't I sit there? Pasha, it tastes like ashes. Then when they finish the steak, they see Yenna's steak. It's smaller than his own. It's parked on mashed potatoes. It just looks bigger. Was darf man allemal gucken bei Yenna? Vergehen! My good friend Rav Shmilu Berkowitz Zatzal used to tell his children, there's no translation for the word vergehen, because only a Yid knows how to vergehen. No a Yid can vergehen. Because he cares about another Yid. It's his simcha. Rabbi Miller used to walk on Ocean Parkway when men were men and houses were houses. When I grew up in Flatbush, the big houses were on Ocean Parkway, Avenue V, U, S, huge houses. He walked by these palatial houses after greet Sendi, Man Chuvim, Man Talmud Sendi. The good out of nowhere, almost outweighing everybody else over here. Al Kapanim. So what happens is that he used to stop by a palatial home and he'd say, Gebench soll sein der Stub. All the people living in it should be healthy and happy and prosperous. They should have good children. They should make good parnasa. There should be shalom bayis. He didn't look at it askance, moisches, sachutzpe. He'd pass a couple of houses, then he would come to his own house on top of the shul, next to the yeshiva and Ocean Parkway, between R&S, Klein Shigadire, Besimcha Atzuma for Yena Yidden. Caring about another Yid means caring about your husband, caring about your wife, caring about your children. It has to be unconditional caring. That should be our mantra. There's something called unconditional love, but I've heard unconditional caring. That's the Tzad HaShoveh. The Kloisenberger Rebbe initially didn't have such a big Rabbista. Nebuch geschochten, his wife, the Nazis, Yemach Shemam, and 10 children. And he himself was tortured in the concentration camps. And he remarried and he rebuilt. So there was a dinner for Kloisenberger Meisters in Montreal. A rather modest dinner. And his driver was taking him to Montreal, driving from Williamsburg to Montreal. So the Rebbe asked him, you know how to go? Yeah. I'm going to go to Montreal and I'll ask. After Lochas, they come into Montreal. There's a snowstorm. 0 degrees. My father's Zatzal grew up in Montreal. My kids grew up in Minneapolis. It's like a tzad shova between Minneapolis and Montreal. They have a lot of things in common. We don't speak French in Minneapolis. Pas vous français. Je m'appelle Moshe Tuvia, la couleur de table noire. I went to Chaimberlin High School. We learned French in 10th grade from Mr. Nemson. Merci le bon Dieu. Thank God. Hakopanim. Don't ask me too many more things. Hakopanim. So what happens is, they drive in, and there's a snowstorm. There's nobody on the street. All of a sudden, they notice on one side of the street, there's a fella standing there walking. And so the Kloisenberger tells him, pull over to this fellow. He sidles over to the fellow, and the Kloisenberger rolls down the windows, before power windows. And he starts asking him in Yiddish some questions of even the Vermeiden, of who's the Gegend, of who's the Shiel. And like the driver's embarrassed, like, how does he know the person's even Jewish? Okay, the man answers in Yiddish. But he obviously felt uncomfortable talking in Yiddish, so the Kloisenberger opened the door for him. And he sat down next to the Kloisenberger. Before the Kloisenberger could say anything, he said, Ich hab feind Gott. I hate God. Took my wife, my children. I hate God. Rahman al-Islam. He took his hand between his two hands, And he warmed up not just his hands, but his neshama. 20 minutes he's talking to the fellow, Hashem loves you, Hashem loves you, Hashem loves you. Finally the fellow tells him directions, the Vimy, how to get to the Kloisenberger Stiebel, and off they go. About 30 years later, there was a citywide event for Kloisenberger Meisters. And maybe 800 people attended the dinner. But the Noam HaKavod, the guest speaker, was a no-show because not a snowstorm in Montreal. Montreal happens to be a beautiful city. We used to go there for Pesach as a child. I remember the beauty of Montreal. It was a snowstorm. So the speaker was a no-show. So the Rebbe turns to the driver, who's now the Gabba, and he tells him to speak. So he gets up, I want the Olam to know who the Kloisenberger Rebbe is. And he says over the story, how they came to Montreal 30 years before, and they couldn't find their way. It was a snowstorm. There was a fellow standing there, bareheaded, and the Rebbe brought him into the car, and he warmed him up. All of a sudden, it was Mlav Malka. The fellow stands up, the Steimel, Kreis the Pais, Kloisenberger Chusid, and he says, I was that Yid. I was that Yid. And the Rebbe at Mongewalm, the Rebbe really warmed me up. And he said, you know why he told the audience? Because I said to myself, what's he talking to me in Yiddish? How does he know that I'm Jewish and that I know Yiddish? And then it dawned on me. Only a Yid, that's angry at God, would walk in the freezing cold weather in Montreal without a hood, without a parka, without a hat, without a covering, in brazen defiance of God. I don't believe in you. I'm not covering my head, and if you're in the middle of a snowstorm. The Rebbe was so sensitive to Nach Yid at Glei Verstand, and he understood that I'm defiant, and that the reason my head is not covered up is I'm a shugane. No, he's fighting with Hashem. The Rebbe has such a neshama, such a heart. He cares for every Yid. I became an Elach Yid. My boy said, it's Nifl in the Welt. Who are we talking about? Who are we talking about? Who's the target audience? Caring for every Yid. Chaviv in Yisroel. Rabbi Kiva says in the Mishnah of his Perek Gimel Yudches, Chaviv in Adam, Chaviv in Yisroel. There's a Kli Chemda that Klal Yisrael has, the Torah Akdosha. And Rabbi Kiva brings Rayas. Chaviv in Yisrael, Chaviv in Adam, because the pasuk says, Nivra B'Tselem Elokim, Shenivra B'Tselem Chibi Yiseichel Nidas Lohem, Shenivra B'Tselem, Shenemar Ki B'Tselem Elokim Asos Adam. You know how beloved mankind is? Hashem created every human being in His image. Chaviv in Yisrael, Shenikru Banim Lamakayim, Chibi Yiseichel Nidas Lohem, Shenikru Banim Lamakayim, Shenemar Banim Atem Lashem Elokechem. You're Hashem's children. Chaviv in Yisrael, Shenotzon Lehem Kli Chemda, Chibi Yiseichel Nidas Lohem, and He informed them. He gave them the Kli Chemda, Shebay Nivra Olam, Shenemar Kelakach Tov Nasat Lechem Torah Siyal Tazevim. Sounds so perfect, so whimsical. There's a flaw in every one of these rayas of Rabbi Kiva. The first person it's talking, the first pasuk is talking about a murderer. The pasuk says, Shoifech dam adam ba'adam dama yishafech, ki b'tselem elikim nivra adam. That's the raya. Bring a raya, nasa adam b'tzelmenu, kid museinu. You're bringing a raya from a murderer? You're trying to prevent a person from killing another human being. Don't spill his blood because you create an image of God. That's a godless von a Mensch. Meret wegen a Mörderer, meret wegen a Reitzeach. Just talk about the fact that he consulted with the Malachim and he said, Nasa Odom b'tzalmeinu kid museinu. Haloi davahu. The last pasuk you want to bring out is the one that talks to a murderer. Don't kill anybody because you created b'tzalim alekim. Chaviv in Yisroel. Why? Bonim atem l'Hashem alekeichem, fill out the rest for me. Bonim atem l'Hashem alekeichem, loi. Says guy to do. Don't cut yourself, defile yourself a la mace, or Agudas, no factionalism. That's Bonim atem l'Hashem alekeichem. Two fellows on a deserted island, 3 shuls, that's the shul we don't daven in. That's the bottom atem l'Hashem alekeichem, like this guy to do, factionalism. Agudas. What's the pshat? B'nei b'chayri Yisroel. That's the best pasuk you can find. And finally, Kli chemda. Ki lekach toiv nosati lochem. Finish it up for me. Tarasi al tazoivu. That's Torah. Kli chemda. Don't be a zhulik and forget your learning. You know what the Yerushalmi says about Svenseru Moira? Yamus Zakay v'loimus chayev. Torah's Moira l'seif daitoi. Yeri l'seif daitoi. Zok the Bavli, he'll end up being molested as Abrius. He'll use up his parents' money, become a Baal Taiva, Zel v'seiva. He'll be a highwayman, he'll kill people for their money. That's that to Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi says, v'soifai lishkach talmudai. He's going to forget his learning. You could be a terrorist, a renegade, a rusha marish, as a mazokt. But if you remember, Elam etziyah shaloi ve'ela chayv lahachars, you're still salvageable. Soifei lishkach talmudai, then you're not salvageable. That's a ben Seira Meira. So we have to krich to that pasuk. B'nei b'chayri Yisroel. Bonim atem l'Hashem alekeichem, like this guy to do. And finally, Ki lekach toiv nosati lechom tarosi al tazoivu. V'zois ha-Torah shesam Moshe. Sach dvarim nifloim. It's so difficult to understand. Why are we addressing the godless of a yid, of a human being as a murderer, a yid who creates factionalism or maims himself a la mace? Or the Torah, tarosi al tazoivu. Fasten your seatbelts. The Slonimer, the Nesiv Shalom, talks about Oirois El Yoinim. Don't get nervous. We're not getting into Kabbalah. My fellows know I'm not into Kabbalah. I know Kabbalah, Talmud, Bavli, Yerushalmi, and 6 other Aramaic words, but that's as far as it goes. I don't know Kabbalah. The Stipler Zatzal said to learn Kabbalah, you have to have a Messiah, and nobody today has a Messiah. So don't get nervous. If you're Makabal from some Makubal, go for it. But I don't know Kabbalah. I'll explain to you what Klipa means. You find in Kabbalah the Lashon of Klipa. All Klipa means, it's a shell. There's a shell that you can sometimes create around yourself, around your neshama, that can't penetrate the ruchnius or allow it out. That's klipa. What's Oiros El Yoinim? Celestial emanations. Let me give you a Hagdomet shir in Oiros El Yoinim. Hagoyim Reb Simcha Wasim in Zatzal, the son of Mereinu Reb Elchanan Zatzal Hashem Yikei Domei. Said a niflige zach. You know, we say ein loy guf, ein loy masigi aguf, and yud gimel ikrim. So what's pshat? Eini HaKadosh Baruch Hu mereish son avarachas hashana. Zroya netuya. Ki yemincha pshuta lekabel shavim. What are you saying? God doesn't have an arm, doesn't have a hand, he doesn't have eyes. Heltzachainet. Says Reb Simcha, he does. We're the facade. Oiros Elyonim means there's a celestial eye that the Rebbeinu Shalom has that's beyond our comprehension. And for us to relate to that, we have an arm, we have an eye, we have a nose. Choraf Hashem Bochem. That's the ultimate af. It's not a metaphor for us to understand the Rebbeinu Shalom. So we talk about his outstretched arm, his hand there to be makabel you in tshuva, his eye, Einei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mereishon v'Achsashon in Eretz Yisrael. That's the reality. We're the facade. We're the virtual reality. To be able to comprehend, says Reb Simcha Wasserman, the ayin of Hashem, we have an ayin. To get a lek and shmek, to try to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu's yad, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ayin. Dvarim nifloim. So it comes out like this, Rabbi Say. Oiros Elyonim means there are celestial emanations that we also have. And even a right seach is salvageable. And even a malmachloikis is salvageable. And even taroisi al tazoivu is salvageable. Dafka those psukim Rabbi Kiva uses. Bonim atem l'Hashem aleikechem, even if there's a loisis guy to do. Bonim atem l'Hashem aleikechem, chaviv in Yisroel. No matter how far you can run, you can't escape. There was a song that these folk would sing. Let the sun shine. I'm not going to give you the whole version, but it goes along the lines, let the sun shine, and ultimately, let the sun shine in. We don't need to let the sun shine in. It's in. We got to let it out. That's Oiros Elyonim. The celestial emanations that every Yid has. Dafke chaviv in Yisroel, because Bodim atem l'Hashem aleikechem. Even if you're a loisis skaidu b'meshugane, the way you mourn is by raising welts. It's awesome in our Torah. It's a pagan custom. But Bodim atem l'Hashem aleikechem, nevertheless, loisis skaidu, you create machloikis. You can't live without machloikis. You're still salvageable. Bodim atem l'Hashem aleikechem chaviv in Yisroel. So that means you got to find the Chaviv in Yisroel and alle Yidden. Is that Rabbi Moshe? Rabbi Moshe Aleim from Shem Shabbos? Wow. Tzaddik Bolo Ira Boisai. You all know what I'm talking about. Don't make believe you don't know what I'm talking about. I remember when I was an oval for my father in Shneider 23 years ago. I lived in Minneapolis. So I would come in to give shurim and speak. Moshe took care of me like he takes care of thousands of people. Plus, collects, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars for tzedakah. And on normal days, he has a very elegant tie. I don't know if you know, Moshe is one of the sharpest dresses in the neighborhood. You know, the Shem Shabbos in Borough Park, there's Rabbi Landau Shul over here. Ali Reim Shleimer. Shem gemacht a broche. Ich darf machen noch a broche for Rabbi Shleimer, but I'm not going to do that. You don't know Moshe. By Deutsch, you don't know Moshe. I was him all the time, and he still is my friend. That's because he likes the Vikings. Okay, weiter gefahren. So what happens? So listen, Cindy, are you paying attention over here? Schluss sich dort, tut sich dort. It's not absurd. Let's go. We're talking. We're talking about Bonim atem l'Hashem aleikechem chaviv in Yisrael. Lois is going to do. Nifl in the Welt. Let's just go with B'nai B'chai Yisrael. This answers another kasha. Isn't Avos all about refining your character? Musar does the gresta Musar. Every Yid, Bonim atem l'Hashem aleikechem. Shlomo HaMelech get the gresta Musar in the Welt. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, B'ni altimos in Mishlei Gimel. It's like the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'ni, you're my son, altimos. Don't mess up. You're on the mountain. Der größte Musers, wir sind Kinder von der Rabbeinu Shalom, but not B'ni B'chayri Yisroel, Bonim Atem L'Hashem Alekechem Lo Yisroel. Do you understand the chiv? We have to care for every Yid. Forget about our machane. Even the machal Shabbos. Bonim Atem L'Hashem Alekechem Lo Yisroel. Even the murderers created B'Tselem Elokim. And that's the Gemara Tak in Sanhedrin Lamed Zayin. Kate said Me'aimim. How do you convince a potential murderer not to testify falsely and put somebody to death? We tell him HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam, Yechidi, one human being. You kill one Jew, you're killing the entire world, but that's not enough. We tell him, according to the Gemara and Rashi, the Mishnah there, person wakes up, he has to say, Bishvili Nivra Olam. The whole world was created for me. That's the ultimate B'ni. Musar B'ni, Zakt Hashem. To my son, Altimus. When this potential murderer was going to purge himself, commit perjury and kill the innocent victim, hears that the whole world was created for him, you're that person, he won't do the Aver. That's the pshat. Caring for every Yid is to let them know you love them unconditionally and you care for them unconditionally, and that's the yesod of that emunah. I don't know that part. What's the end? Tell me, no? Who made a Shem Bros? For the smoker? Invited the Rebbe. He invited the Rebbe and? Wow. Reb Zev Overman's son, Reb Elam, told me that the PS on the story was that Yena's smoker, who smoked on Shabbos and davened for the Omid. So he davened for the Omid and Bubba, he became an Elcha Yid. And a few years later, he made a chasana, and the Rebbe couldn't come, but he came for his Sheva Brachos. It helped on Maisa. You're letting one person daven for the Yomid. I know, it's killing you. It's Pashut killing you. How are you going to sit through this guy? He's got like an inid yarmulke. Or he's not wearing a heicher spadik, he's wearing a short spadik. Or he's not wearing a hat. Or he's wearing a blue shirt. Or he didn't put on the gartel properly. That's it. Life's over. Rechet nicht, Hitler rechet. That's the aside. Rabbi said the big gates of Haris over here. The devil made him do it. But even Banim Atem L'Hashem Alekechem Lo Yisroel to do. Chavivin Yisroel. That's our target audience. That's what we're talking about. The very hard meister to say over. If I had not heard it from you did. Oh, Taka. All right, we'll get it. There's plenty. Don't worry. Not much. All right, just to see Zayn Shane and Panim. They're fighting now. Abella Baruch Shulman Shlite. My friend, he davens him by us. He's a Rav, he's a Shiva. Told me over this Maisa from his uncle. His uncle told him over the Maisa. It's time to fasten your seatbelts again if you're in the Maisa. Shkoyach Tzadik. Shanghai? Can you do a Shanghai? 400 lions of the Milli Yeshiva. Shmuel Beerbaum Zatzal. Rab Nachum Trocker Zatzal. Rabbi Malin Zatzal. Rabbi Yudel Zatzal. All the Große Yidden from the Meer. Rab Chatzkel, the Malach Hashem Tzvakais. They were learning in the Bais Aaron shul that when they built it, there were 20 families, and they couldn't understand why they built such a big shul. And when the last bacher from the Mir Yeshiva occupied the last bench, 21 years later, they chapshat. That's why they had such a big shul. You've seen the pictures. Well, there's one person in the picture that the story is about. But you got to hear the story to believe it. If I didn't hear it from a shulman, I wouldn't have believed it. Shanghai was impossible, a cesspool of humanity that lived in the ghetto, poverty and crime. And a bach in the Steingedach, Lalina Valechem, was nichshel, with the Chanezish. I'm not saying anymore. You want to speak to me privately, I'll tell you what a Chanezish is. But he was nichshel with a not Jewish person. That wasn't the problem. The problem was he contracted a disease he's going to die from. And the only way he's saved is if he has penicillin. And penicillin was rare in the world. They needed it for the armies on the battlefield. Imagine Shanghai, China, forget about it. It was exorbitant. Only one person had a stash of cash for emergencies, Reb Chatzkel Levenstein, the Malach. So 3 Bachrim took their heart in their hands. They went to Reb Chatzkel. And they told a sordid tale of a Mir Yeshiva Bach in the middle of the Beis Medrash who was a Talmud Chacham. He was nichshel with a Chanezisha. Without asking a question, he took out a stash of cash, he gave it to him. This fellow took the penicillin. And he lived. The Bachim were ready. That Shabbos, there's going to be a shmooze that's going to knock the roof off. Europe is burning beneath our feet. We don't know what's happened to our parents. Our families, they're being killed, they're being gassed and cremated. And a Bach is nichshel mit a Chanezische, a Boil Aramis. Darf man rauswerfen. Not one word. A month goes by, not a word. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Nila, not a word. After a whole year, these 3 Bachrim came back to Reb Chatzkel and they said, Rebbe, Heilige Rebbe, what happened? We thought for sure you'd give a Mussar Shmooze to beat every Mussar Shmooze. You'd beat us up. You'd inspire us. Bleiben heilig, heilige Eugen. You didn't say a word. Hat Reb Chatzkel gesagt, Mussar is fall da Avere. Noch da Avere tut min Tshuva und man geht weiter. Mussar is before the Avera. But once Rachmana litzlan, you fell into the Avera, you do tshuva and you move on. Rabbi Shulman told me that his uncle told him that very few people knew who this Bacha was. He became a groise marbitz Torah. He became a big marbitz Torah. Bonim atem lashem eloikeichem loisiskoidedun. Klichemda, Terossi al Tazaivo. He was nichshel in a terrible Avera. What's the commonality with all these Averas? I'll tell you another Maisa with the Heilige Visions of Rabbi Yisroel. A fella comes to him. He wants a bracha for his daughter who's becoming, she's a kala, she's getting married. And the Rebbe Vinshton Ze'evam. He says, no, Rabbi, I need extra bracha. You see, he says he's an alman. He's a widower. The girls are Yisaima. Please give us a starke bracha. He gives an unbelievable bracha for this Yisaima. But then he says, I want you to zog zu ein Zach, that after the wedding, you come to me directly from the chasana. He says, Rebbe, after the mitzvah tanz, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I want you to come directly to me. Many months later, there's a knock at the door at 5 o'clock in the morning. And Yener Yid, Mr. Steimel, he's in the Zokin, he's the Payas. And he comes in, and the Rebbetzin has kibbut kal, and they're ready for him. And the Rebbe sits him down, gives him to eat, a l'chaim. Who is the Masada Kedushin? The fellow's heart sank. Who was the Masada Kedushin? He came to ask twice for a bracha for his daughter. He didn't even send the Rebbe an invitation. Who read the Ksubah? Who got bracha achrita? Who were the Eidim? A lot of relatives come from America, from Chutz La'aretz. People stay for all the dances. How was the music? How was the food? How was the flowers? He grills them a half an hour in every prat in the wedding. Push it. He vinches him on, and the fellow goes to daven vasikin. God bless those Rebbetzins, because without the Rebbetzins, we wouldn't have these stories. So the Rebbetzin says to the Rebbe, what was that all about? He said like this. He said, what does a father do right after he marries off his daughter? He comes home and he gushes about the wedding to his wife. Weren't the dances gewaldig? Wasn't the music gewaldig? Wasn't it nice about hundreds of people who celebrated? Wasn't the food gishmak? Wasn't the simcha nit shayach? Weren't the bachrim so lebedik? He has nobody to gush to. He's all alone. Let him gush to me. Let him gush to me. No philosopher in the world could ever come up with this. Das is B'ni b'chayri Yisroel, Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem, Chavivin Yisroel, that's the koyach of Torah. As a Rebbe versteht, who's he going to gush to? Rabbi said, listen to these mices. The Kloisenberger was handling with a fellow who was bareheaded in the winter to fight with God. The Vishnitzer gave the Stella of davening for the Amid in Vishnitz to a Machal Shabbos who 20 minutes before was smoking, the Bavava smoking in Central Park. The Vishnitzer invited the fellow, he wasn't one of his Chassidim. Arain, was haste. Our Tochter is mein Tochter. Dvorim nifloyim ad l'ma'oid. Rabbi Miller, for years, tolerates snoring because one day this fellow would learn with his son in Kailo in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi say it's right there. Musar Hashem b'ni altimos. So many mices. And the commonality of everything is that we care for Yena Yid. A Bach is nichshal in the mir. Welt am Arbet's Teire. Because of Chatzkel Paskin, Musa is Fad Avera. Before you sin, afterwards, you do tshuva. Bach in Lakewood. In Bnei Brak. He wasn't a Bach anymore, he's off the D. Off the Derech, nicht eingedacht. The kids, he's getting married, and he was estranged from his family. So he comes up his first Shabbos, finally convinced to come for a Suda. His father tells him, let's go to Rav Steinman. Not going to Rav Steinman, Sheiches, let's go to Rav Steinman. He asks him to go to Rav Steinman. Steinman talks to him and talks to him and talks to him from his heart. And he gets married, and his Shabbos and his Taras Mishpacha. See, years later, the father asked him, why were you asking him to go to Rav Steinman? He was so turned off from Yiddishkeit. He said, when I was in the Cheder, I tried very hard. And we took a bechina by Rav Steinman. And for every right answer, he got a candy. And as hard as I tried, he asked me, I didn't know. He asked me again, I didn't know. He asked me a third time, I didn't know. As we're walking out the door, Steinman gives the candy to this boy, and to this boy, and to this boy, and to every boy. And to me, he gives 3 candies. He said, because you tried. And they knew their answer, but you tried 3 times to find different answers, you get 3 candies. Because he gave me those 3 candies, I was maskim to meet with him. And because he was maskim to meet with him, he became a Shemet Torah mitzvahs. My Rebbetzin has a cap that somebody gave her for our trips in, private areas. 10 chiyuch, hakol tova. Put on a smile. Everything is good for the best. Rabbi Sai, Chabad Yedid Nemon, his name is Sholi. Many of you know him. He works in Bagel Hole. He's the head of the Tanses, a big tzaddik. His brother Alexander Zisha ben Aliza needs a refuah shleimah. Nitshayach Sholi is always looking to take care of every Yid. So now he started something called 10 Chiyuch. And he gets magnificent birthday cakes on the birthday of a Yosem or a Yesoima. And that's a Stam Stunky cakes. Ostravitsky and Strauss. They make magnificent, magnificent cakes. And Sholi didn't ask me to ask you for money. He asked me to ask you to take down this number. And if you know of a Yosem or a Yesoima, no matter where they live, he's going to get him a birthday cake. You fax Sholi, text him, fax his when I was a kid. Text 917-655-4770. I told Sholi that Irgun Shirei Torah told me that there could be thousands of people who could be watching this, so he better have a good phone. He said he installed extra phones. 917-655-4770. You want to hear a Maisa? A certain lady who never had a difficult time with her children. And for whatever reason, she was upset about certain things, certain people. She comes into Begelho on Coney Island Avenue, and she only sees, oh, your son's birthday's in 2 days. How did you know? How did you remember? I remembered. We gotta get him a birthday cake. She says, I'm in Vacation Village. It's not going to happen. It's so sweet of you. But the fact that you remember the birthday and wanted to send him a birthday cake, das allein is gewaltig. So she goes out, and the fella who was next in line, he says, what was that shrai about? What was she so excited about? What was she so thankful? Well, her son's not feeling so well. And the tanzas try to make Chad Gadya make it happy for them. And I remember his birthday's in 2 days. I told her about a birthday cake, but I had no way of getting it up to the mountains. He says, where does the lady stay? Vacation Village. He says, my house is across the street from Vacation Village. I'm going to pick up the cake and I'm going to hand deliver it to the child on his birthday. Do you hear Maisa what's going on in Flatbush? Sholi wants to give a cake. The lady's all excited. And Punk, the next man in line, has a house across the street from Vacation Village. I don't know if that's in Airmont. I don't know if it's in Long Beach. I don't know where in the mountains it is. But whatever it is, this fella's house was across the street. I'm sorry, where is it again? Where's Vacation Village? Sheldrake. Loch Sheldrake. Okay, Loch Sheldrake. Good. So, I'll finish with one more Maise, and you'll daven Ma'ariv, and I gotta meet with my cousin. Okay. This is Moiridik! Moiridik! And I heard it from the Aldavar Lane, and he told me at the beginning of the 3 weeks, and he says, I'm telling the Rav he's going to use it, so now I'm using it for the Heilige Irgun Shirei Torah and the Heilige Boston Bais Medrash, with a packed crowd. Most of you are not wearing masks. Oh, shkoyach. I'll put mine on in a minute. Do whichever your Rav tells you to do. Proud of you with your mask. I'm saying I'm not proud without the mask, but with the mask I'm proud. Good. Moshe, when you pour it, it's geschmack. What should I tell you? That's what it says. Rabbi Deutsch poured the first cup. It was good, but this is like. Before I forget it, Yidden, Choshev lady once told me, you should make the bracha out loud. Rabbi Sheheh B'ochat Torah Dinoi. Aleinu melech haolam b'rein nefashos Bais. T'chasvenon al kama sheparos alach yispam nefesh kochoi b'ruchei ha'olamim. Listen to this, Maisa. This fellow runs Amazing Savings on Avenue M. There's another Amazing Savings on McDonald Avenue. He gets a frantic phone call. This fella's grandmother had bought a jewelry box from Amazing Savings. And she ended up returning it. The problem is that unbeknownst to her, Yataya Honey took all of her jewelry and put it in the jewelry box. She did not know this. $20,000 of bracelets, necklaces, jewelry. Now, she had returned the jewelry box to the Amazing Savings on McDonald Avenue 1 month before. And she didn't know that her jewelry was in the box. Her husband never said that he did her a chesed to put all the jewelry in the box. You should see the jewelers of all jewelers. Cindy's eyes are popping open like I don't know what over here. So, Bekitz, and if you need a piece, go to raise it. That's for a different time. If you want to make a donation to Chaim Berlin, we have Rabbi Hobman here. Hanocha Kalocha, we have Bumi over here, we'll take care of your tefillin. A lot of wonderful Yidden over here. Kitza, what happens is that he frantically calls Amazing Savings. And it gets connected to Coney Island Avenue, to McDonald, and they're about to close. So he called first M, and he got a hold of McDonald. They said, do you have a receipt? No. It was a cash transaction. Didn't save the receipt. Well, if we had a receipt, we had this, an invoice, we could trace it, dos and Jens. Snowball's chance in Hades is in America. So he says, let's run over to the to Amazing Savings on McDonald. They get there 10 minutes before they close. They rush to the area where the jewelry boxes are displayed. There's one jewelry box, her jewelry box, with all of the jewelry still inside. She didn't lose a thing. You understand what's the pshat caring about another Yid? What do you want from me? I'm not the manager of there, I'm over here. And you're never going to find it. They probably threw it away. And if they put it back on the shelf, it probably was sold. But he rushes and they open the store and he's there 10 minutes before they close. And the jewels are intact. Rabbi say, we are an incredible ummah. We can go on the entire night. I'd love to continue our conversation, but Rabbi Hoberman just came home. I got to focus on my husband. I'd love to talk to you, but it's 7. He has to eat supper. Could you imagine a world of Rebbitzin Hobermans and the respect that Rabbi Hoberman had his Rebbitzin? I remember Beher Levi, what he said. Lo Yuman Ki Yisupa. This is one couple in Klal Yisrael. The derech eretz that we have for each other has to extend to every Yid. Erechet, Hitler rechet. And we heard the end of the story that he made Sheva Brachas and the Rebbe came. Nor a Yid was a tinus on the Rebbeinu Shalom is going bareheaded in Montreal in the middle of in the winter in a snowstorm. We got to just try to open our eyes a little bit more. If that's the way it is with other people, what about our own children? Nebuch, there are kids off the derech. The parents can't handle it. Grandparents can do magical things. Uncles and aunts can do magical things. Neighbors, friends. You know, sometimes at the Agudas, I see it before my eyes. There's a reason why the Rav faces the tzibur. You see boys that were Yerei Mushleim, perfect kids, and all of a sudden the hair starts getting modna, and you want to reach out and hug them and kiss them and bang their head against the wall. You don't know what to do. But the parents keep on trying and trying and trying and trying, and they succeed. And they succeed. The Chesed Elyon, it's very different than before 1960. Before 1960, if a person intermarried, it was all over. One of the derech, nothing to talk about. Today, most kids come back. It takes time. But you got to be creative. Unconditional caring for others and for your own. In the source of unconditional caring, I guarantee you will be zecher b'siyata d'shmaya to shidduchim. Rabbi Bull told me I should go a little overtime. One meiser with a shidduch, because fart, it's Tu B'Av. Couldn't speak there because I'm speaking here. Tu B'Av. There was a girl in Bnei Brak who was with a fantastic shidduch, a gewaldige bacha. She went out once and she refused to go out again. And there were other shidduchim, she wouldn't get out. So what happens is that she's mavata. I told you, fagin is a Yiddish word. There's no English translation for fagin. She fagins. So her next sister got engaged and got married. Her brother engaged and married. Another brother. 11 siblings, all married and engaged. Finally, she wakes up. I'm asking him to go out again. 10 years later. Yena Bacha, who went out first, was still available. They went out, they got engaged, and they got married. And Mullah Sheva Brachas, the mother who was suffering from debilitating Yena Machla, was Nifteris. So by the cave, she came to the mother of Betzach Mechila. And she said, Mama, you're ba'almedik shoyt, you're in the world of truth, you know exactly what happened. It wasn't an action. I had a reason why I didn't want to go out. I was walking the streets of Bnei Brak. I was crying my eyes out. You were so not well. You were so not well. And I was crying. I wouldn't be zeicher to have you walk me down the aisle by my chasana. I saw a Yid with a white beard. And he said to me, Tochtel, why are you crying? And I said, I'm terrified my mother will pass away before my chasana. He said, I'm maftiach you that your mother will walk you down to the chuppah. And my name is Karelitz. It was the Chazon Ish. Haftoche from the Chazon Ish that she'll walk down the aisle with the mother by a chasana. I came back, I was dancing, but then I started thinking, what about my siblings? The mama is very krank, she's very not well with Yena Machla. So I'll be zeicher. What about my brothers and sisters? So I came up with a patent. I will not get married to every one of my brothers and sisters get married first. So Mama, I gave you such agmas nefesh, you and the tata. You didn't understand what happened to me. I was a good girl. I always listened. I refused to go out. This is why. And Taka, when the last of my siblings got married, I was masim to go out there. Ben Shem saved me the bacha, and we got married. And Taka, the haftocha of the Chazon Ish was true, came true. You walked me down the aisle, but you wouldn't have terrorists during Sheva Brachas. Mamich betech mechila. That was my cheshbon. Do you hear a maisa with a sister? Nicht kein Fremde. That's unconditional caring. She put her life on hold. Who knows if anybody will marry her? This is Bnei Brak. If you don't get married at 17, you're an old hag at 18. So now she's like almost 30 years old. What's going to be with her? Yena Bacha is still available. She goes ahead and marries Yena Bacha. Zu weinen, zu lachen, zu danken der Rabbeinu Shoma Mazelche, heilige Yiddische Kinder. If we have unconditional caring, and tonight is Tu B'Av, do Klal Yisrael a favor tonight, think of a shidduch. I don't care if it's the wackiest shidduch. Let me tell you, I'm a Rov for over 30 years. I very often walk to Chasana, I look at the two sides and I said, who in the world put these people together? And then I chap. The Bais Shalaylam. The Bais Shalaylam. All you got to do is be a shliach. Take the strobe and put it on top of the Hatzalah. Ramat Yisrael says, whenever you call for a shidduch, you're like, make a Hatzalah call. You know what I say? Whenever they ask you about a shidduch, think your Hatzalah. Don't answer vergrumpt. Don't answer with a stomach ache, with a sore throat. Like real estate. Sell, sell, sell. You got to be honest. You can't fulfill people. But get into it like it's your eigene kind. It is your eigene kind. And don't forget your nieces and your nephews and your cousins and your neighbors. Could you imagine if just within the next 24 hours, everybody reads one shidduch, thinks of one shidduch, what will be accomplished? Not just in this world with the fleshly hands and the fleshly gowns and the fleshly bands. I'm talking about the Oiros El Yoinim, the celestial emanations. We get tanzen in Shemayim. When I became a chosin, my Shver Zatzal Rav Agoin of Yankiv Daldak was very close to the Stipler, to Ala Gedolim, and to Rabbi Miller. He made an appointment for me to go see Rabbi Miller, Rebbetzin and I, Morabela. So we come and knock on the door. Rebbetzin Etel answers the door. The Rav is waiting for you. We go upstairs. You know what Rabbi Miller said? Chosin and Kala. You're walking down the street like an ordinary, average couple. But in Shamayim, the Malachim are dancing. You're building a Bais, Nema Yisroel. The Malachim are dancing. You're a Chosin and a Kala. Could you imagine if every Chosin and Kala got that message? You have the ring, you don't have the ring, you don't put that, you don't put that. I was talking with my cousin Rebellia a few months ago. I was walking me part of the way home, and he passed somebody and said, oh, Mazel Tov, I heard your sister's engaged. Tell me, what's the date and which driveway? It's no joke. A couple of months ago, it was which driveway. So now it's like a little bit that it's not a driveway. Got to start dancing. Put on your dancing shoes. Pick up the phone. Read a shidduch. Take care of Yenna. Say good morning. Ask a person how he's doing. Don't hit him in the nose because he is wearing a mask. We're defeating the whole purpose of the masks. I mean, people are getting violent over this. I mean, Bumi knows I'm a big mask guy. He's also. Well, we try to have masks at the Aguda, but you don't knock a guy out without a mask up. I don't know what this Rav Shita is, whatever, it's all good. You follow your Rav. If you go down to Rav Airport, whatever he does, you do. You come to me, you do what I do. You go to Chaim Berlin, you do what Chaim Berlin does. But a fellow who makes brisim told me that he saw an 85-year-old man got clocked by somebody because he told him, where's your mask? So let's blame it on the virus. No, we blame it on our virus. We got to get better, people. We are better. We are good. Chaviv in Yisroel. We should be zeicher to get stronger during this tkufa, to be healthy and well with shidduchim, b'ezras Hashem, with panos, shalom bayis, gesund, and the rest of simcha, b'vias l'gol, m'herav yameinu. Amen.
Shem Yirgin Shir Torah Moses Boston. Like to be Yashikayach to Lieff for the very inspiring drosha. Like to be Yashikayach to Dr. Mrs. Aaron Mandel for the support for tonight's Shir Nishmas Imo Leah Basachover B'chaim Ala Shalom Yotza Yud Beizov. Rabbi Bais, show you caring for your fellow Yidden by bringing the Agudas Torah of Yirgin Shir Torah to them and sponsoring a shir. Call Yirgin Shir Torah 718-851-8651 or email tapecenter@yeshivanet.com for this great schos. CDs of tonight's show will be available after tomorrow. Eshkach Tov for coming. Chananya ben Akash Shem Eretz HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakis Es Yisrael L'Fika Hibram Torah Mitzvah Shenema L'Noch Chofetz HaMatzitka Yagdol Torah V'Yadir. Kadosh Kadosh Shmei Rabba.